Sahara Rose is a best-selling author, host of the acclaimed Highest Self podcast, as well as an Ayurvedic and abundance mindset expert that has been called a leading voice for the millennial generation into the new paradigm shift by Deepak Chopra. Give it up for Sahara Rose, everyone. Welcome, Sahara.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's such a pleasure to be here.
So wonderful to have you. It was, maybe a year and a half? 2
years
years ago?
Longer, yeah.
Yeah, maybe longer that you were on the podcast. Mm-hmm. And so when we started this, you instantly came to mind as someone that would be excellent to have on. You've done, even in that time, you've had such an incredible, growth trajectory.
Been doing my Dharma.
A lot, yeah, which we're going to talk a lot about
Yes.
tonight. Yeah. So maybe let's just dive into the deep end of the pool.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little. Well, before we get into Dharma, because that's really your newest book is all about your Dharma. Let's back up a little bit and talk a little bit about Ayurveda, if we could, and then because I know it all weaves together ultimately for you and. Your podcast, the Highest Self podcast, you talk about all this stuff, and so what for those who aren't even familiar, with Ayurveda, what is it?
Yeah, so Ayurveda is the world's oldest health system, but so much more than a health system. It's really a system of balancing the mind and the body. So it's the sister science of yoga. Most of us go to a yoga class because we're trying to get more flexible or help with our anxiety for a physical or mental reason. But actually what we're practicing is Ayurveda. So Ayurveda means the knowledge of life. In order to be healthy, you must have full knowledge of all areas of your life. So that's the foods you eat, but also your environment, your relationships, your thoughts, everything comes together and creates your health, right? So Ayurveda has, everything from what are the best foods for your dosha, for your archetype, for your energy type, but more than that, what are the best exercises, meditation practices, who are the kinds of people you should be around, what seasons are ideal for you. It's essentially creating your ideal lifestyle based off of your natural born constitution.
So the doshas and each different, how many doshas are there?
So there are 3 doshas. The word dosha means energy. So vata is air. So an airy person, if I told you, I have this friend who's so airy, what do you think they're like?
Blonde? No. Yeah, someone who's just very, very light, head in the clouds a lot, or very, a lot of chipper, upbeat energy. Right?
Yeah. I mean, even you just said head in the clouds.
Right.
Like how more vata can you get than that? So someone a space cadet, ungrounded. But, they probably live in Venice and have a cool TV show. Because they're creative, they're idealistic, they're in the future, they're big picture thinkers, right? They're like, okay, that's like normal life, I'm going to do it up here.
Right.
So they're visionaries. If you look at Steve Jobs' energy, he was like, imagine a world where we had these screens that control our lives.
Right.
And he did it.
Right.
Look at us,
Right.
So Vata's really in the future. It's up in the air. In the air, nothing can hold you down. You're like, I'm just going to come up with the next thing. But the other side of that is a lot of the people, I don't know if you've noticed, have all these ideas. And they don't actually get done, know?
Right.
And that's the hardest part. How can you actualize that and bring it to this physical plane because we're here?
Right.
So that's the shadow side of it. And then overthinking, anxiety, being too in your head, not enough in your body. Then we have the pitta people, which are fiery. So if I told you, I have this really fiery friend, what do you think they're like?
They're maybe quick-tempered. And that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, feisty.
I have a friend I think of, and he's always hot and drinking a ton of water.
Yeah.
And so I imagine that he's pitta.
Exactly. So the pitta, fiery, you're driven. You set a goal and you're going to go do it. So these kind of people tend to be, entrepreneurs, athletes, CEOs, because they're, very ambitious people. But the other side of that is, sometimes life doesn't go your way. Don't know if that's ever happened to anyone.
Not me, but I can imagine what it'd be like if it did.
And then how do you react? And that fiery reaction is like a volcano. You erupt. I can't handle.
Right.
And then that's when, you get further and further off track from the Dharma. You go into the karma, which is, starts with a poke and then turns into a punch and then turns into a push until it turns into an accident. And you can't deny it anymore.
Right.
But then they keep responding with more anger, more resistance, more why me? And, we look at certain people and it's almost like us against the world, right? And that's not it. We're a co-creation with the world. So when that pit is out of balance, you need to move into more flow, move into more ease, move into the trust, the surrender, the allowance. And then you're actually able to get all those things done that you want to do without the resistance.
Right.
Fire should not be with more fire. We need more water.
Right.
And then we have kapha. So kapha is earthy. So if I told you I have a really earthy friend, what do you think they're like?
They don't shave their armpits.
Everyone, ladies.
For truly, I
yeah.
don't know. I hang out with a lot of hippies, obviously. So, yeah, earthy, someone who's really into being, I think of a friend who is always wanting to be in the woods and taking pictures. Every Instagram post is like of a different plant or tree or like, they're just their passion.
Totally. So they're literally connected to the earth in terms of nature. And then personality-wise, they're grounded, they're rooted. Do you ever have guests on the show that talk a little bit more like this?
Yeah, very hard to relate to for me.
And how does it make you feel?
It makes me feel relaxed.
Let's just stare into each other's eyes for 7 minutes.
Yes, the long stare.
Do you want a hug?
Yes.
Heart to heart?
A very long one.
Yeah.
Very, very long one.
Because that's how we connect, right?
Right. Absolutely. You're also good at this.
Yeah, I'm around a lot of kaphas. So that kapha, it's so grounded, it's so peaceful, and it kind of shows your own relationship with that dosha. Because some of us were like, oh my God, get away from me, like stop staring at my eyes. But others of us are like, that feels so grounding. I need more kapha friends in my life.
Right,
I went to see Eckhart Tolle speak. The guy, I'm clearly doing something wrong. That guy was probably paid $100,000 and said like 3 words.
Yeah,
he's like, oh, you. Awake. I'm like, no, I'm not awake. And he literally, there were more pauses than there were words. And like half of the audience was like, get me out of here.
Yeah.
And the other half was just like, transcending.
Yeah.
And it just kind of shows like your relationship with the kapha. Like, do you love Eckhart Tolle? Like even Oprah, she's like kapha mama.
Yeah, right.
It's like, why do we love Oprah? Like, did she do a Tony Robbins style speech? No, she's just like, honey, just sit down, tell me about your life. And just like her holding that space for you, kapha's space, it just takes you so much deeper into yourself than you ever could have. So really, as a society, we actually really need more kapha, but we're afraid of it. It's gonna make me fall behind. I can't take a pause. So we then see that shadow side of kapha, which is the laziness, which is the Netflix addiction, hopefully to this show, but
right. In this case, it's
fine.
Okay.
Yeah. But
there are exceptions.
We see the sluggishness, the not wanting to move. So really, we need all 3 doshas. We all have all 3 doshas.
That was what I was about to ask.
Yes, but for some of us, we're born more with a particular 1 or particular 2. There are very few people who are like totally balanced in all 3. But most of us would be, Vata Pitta or Pitta Kapha, etc. You're born with a set amount of all 3. It's kind of like astrology. You're born with like your chart.
How much fire and water and air.
Exactly. But then your lifestyle, your food, your environment, all of these things will change it. So really the purpose of Ayurveda is to go back to your natural born constitution, which is called your Prakriti, your natural born constitution. So if you were that Pitta kid who is just like getting in the dirt and messing around and super just, sports oriented, you need to go back. You need to have maybe more team in your life, more structure, more support. You're going to thrive in those settings. If you were that Vata kid who is artistic, always drawing, always dreaming up of these new worlds, like the artist, super Vata, that he's doing his Dharma by actualizing that. And some people are more kapha. They wanted to like play house and like take care of their dolls and be with the animals. They need to be doing that today. So really, all you have to do is go back to who you always have been. And that's going to be the key, not only to your physical health, your mental health, but also you actualizing the big reason why you're here.
Right. So is there like a test of sorts that people can take to figure out? I mean, what is the process for someone to really, like, is there a way to calculate what percentages or?
Yeah. So I have a quiz on my website, iamsahararose.com, which will tell you the exact percentages of each dosha that you have. So that's just a really quick and easy way to do it. And, you know, I've written books on this topic, et cetera. But essentially, when you learn about the doshas and the more you dive into it, you're able to see it. You're able to be like, that's my mom, that's my ex, that's this person. And it becomes so crystal clear. And then you start to notice your own shifts, you know, like, during summer, you may be very pitta because it's hot, or during a stressful time in your life, you may become more pitta. And then when you're able to notice these shifts within yourself, you're able to see, okay, this dosha is out of balance, and then these are the things I can do in my diet and my lifestyle to bring it back into balance. So it essentially allows you to become your own healer because you're always able to see what's going on.
So you wrote a book all about...
3 books.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
So can you give us a little insight? Because I know you have one that is forthcoming all about Dharma.
So I wrote The Idiot's Guide to Ayurveda, the part of the official Idiot's Guide series. So that's just like a 400-page textbook on all things Ayurveda, from morning practices. You know, a lot of things we do, like dry brushing, oil pulling, tongue scraping, that's all Ayurvedic.
Right.
So it describes all of that. I wrote a book called Eat, Feel Fresh, which is more about the food, nutrition, lifestyle, integrating it with the blue zones around the world, which are areas with the world's longest lifespans. And then I have my new Deccan guidebook, A Yogic Path, which is all about, you know, utilizing this in your lifestyle through an interactive deck experience. And then this 4th book that I'm writing now is Discover Your Dharma, which is how to find your purpose. So it's this, you know, interconnected. I never ever thought that I would even be able to like do what I wanted to do. I didn't grow up in a background that ever talked about this stuff.
Right.
But it just kind of shows that like once you actually, it's a surrender with a push. It's like once you push enough to surrender, then things just start flowing out of you. And it's like these books are writing themselves through me. I'm just the vessel for them.
Right. I love that idea. It's like, you know, I think I believe all art is like 100%. Coming through you. It's like when you are open and receiving, it's like there's something beyond the veil, you know, that is an extension of us, our higher self, whatever you want to call it, that is, you know, assisting. And it's really about getting into that state, that receptive state. I believe everyone, you know, and this is really what your Dharma is about, right? Is finding like what is your highest path. Is that correct?
For sure. I mean, I think all of our dharmas is to raise consciousness, right? No one's here not to raise consciousness, but the way that one person may do it is through music, and the way another person does it is through making someone laugh or being a nurse or whatever it is. But we're all just here to up-level the planet. It's just having the courage to actually listen, because we all know, people say, I don't know my purpose. We all know. It's just the fear. It's the scarcity mindset. It's the trauma, the ancestral wounds, our parents' projections, all of the things that we're like holding on to, that really our work is not to go find that purpose over there. It's to let go of all that we're not, so the purpose can just be.
Yeah, right. So what is the premise of the book? I mean, do you give people, the forthcoming book, do you give people techniques on how to really tap into their Dharma?
Yeah, so I came to Ayurveda because I had massive health problems, right? For me, it was like, how can I survive? I had, I went through perimenopause when I was 21, so I lost like 30 pounds, all my hair, like early stage osteoporosis. I couldn't digest any food, like super, super sick.
At 21?
When I was 21 years old, I had 0 estrogen left in my body, literally.
Wow. And you're so shiny now. It's like...
Yeah, and that was, like 7 years ago.
Right?
Not a
Isn't she
lifetime
glowing,
ago.
right? Like, when you tell me you lost all your hair and like, I'm like...
Yeah, literally. And so I came to Ayurveda because I tried everything. I was on so many prescription medications and nothing could help me. And then I took this personality quiz that was just like told my life story, which was Vata. And then I started to learn more. So then I went on this path of healing. How can I heal myself? How can I share this to others? But then when I got healed, I'm like, what is there to this life? It's like when you're sick, all you can think about is getting better.
Yeah.
When you're in the hospital, you're like, how can I get out of this hospital? But it's like once you're out, it's like, now what do I do with this body, you know?
that mission's accomplished. And
and then I was like, well, now what? I guess I'm gonna just like go become a real estate agent, like literally, because I had no one around me. It was like I was like, well, Mom, like, didn't you tell me to do what I love? She's like, no, you're not actually supposed to do that. Like, I was like, wait,
that was just for you to get
has my whole life been a lie? And then I was like, how could I, not only figure out what it is I want to do, but figure out how to create a lifestyle around it, how to support myself with talking about a system that no one's ever heard of, And I really feel like the universe assigned me to like the most random thing, like Ayurveda for you, because if I can make this happen, y'all can make anything happen,
Right.
So I started to go through that journey, and then I realized that these doshas are the exact guidelines that will help you discover your dharma, your purpose, and all of the things that I was criticized about, as a more Vata person. You're confused, because I would change my mind, or I would have a lot of ideas. Like, you're out of touch with reality. All of these things that you're labeled, right? I don't know if anyone's ever labeled you that, no, you're perfect.
No.
Yeah.
I can imagine what it'd be like if someone called me crazy.
But then you start to realize, like, you know what? That's my superpower. And what if I started to lead with that? What if I started to lead with the things that I'm the most ashamed of? The things that I would never want anyone to know about me? What if that was the thing I introduced myself
Vulnerability,
with?
it's like the superpower.
Yeah. I mean, when I was blogging about, health and nutrition, I was like, I can't let anyone know I have health problems because I have to be the pinnacle of health for anyone to listen to me. And it's like, no, let me tell you, I'm still suffering. I still have these things going on, and I'm going to share from this point of vulnerability, because then you know that I'm no better than you. I'm the exact same as you. And if this works, I'm just right here and you're here on this thread, but maybe you're here and there and you can teach me on another thread.
Right.
So that's all we're doing. We're just pulling each other up.
Agreed. Yeah, I love that. It's, I often say we teach best what we most need to learn.
Absolutely.
And that's something as, talking a lot about perspective and how to shift, one's life. I feel like that's been a superpower to share with people and say, look, I'm not at all perfect. I'm going to work on this stuff publicly. I'm going to share things. I may change what I think a year from now. I may,
Right.
And I feel like that's becoming more and more accepted. Like, people are realizing now, whereas in the past it was all about hiding what was your weakness. And now it's like, no, here it is. And then you create that bridge between yourself and the other people, because they're like, oh, you're human too. You're not just this character that, and I'm so grateful that more people are starting to realize
100%.
that.
Yeah, and I want to talk about, you just said, like, changing your mind, and how a lot of us think if you change your mind, you change your career, that's a failure, right? They're like, oh, that person changed their career again, as if that's a bad thing. But your dharma, there's actually only one dharma that you have. There's only one unique vibration that your soul came here to fulfill. So your dharma is your soul's purpose, right? But that may have many different iterations.
Right.
I may be here to, raise consciousness and bring ancient modalities through my throat chakra. But that could be me talking on this show, talking on a podcast, writing a book, maybe I'll, do something else, or make a documentary, etc. But it's always that same dharma, but we get so caught up in the career. Your career is not the same as your dharma. Career can just be one manifestation of it, but it also may not be your career at all. Some people choose to not make their dharma their career. They choose to not have the pressure of monetization on it, which is also okay.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. It's like I originally moved to the West Coast, to California, many, many years ago, making music. And the idea was to raise consciousness through music. And I had an experience in a particularly, 8-year run or whatever of doing that, and had a lot of fun and touched people's lives. And, and if it wasn't for that, I would have never led to doing the podcast, and then this, and then on and on. So it's a great example.
And you're still using your voice. You're still using mass media. It's like your soul knew the way it needed to show up, and it's like, can I shine my light over here and just try these different things and not get, some people do have like one specific role that they play, like I'm a painter and that's it. Whereas other people, it's always shifting and moving, and it's like allowing it to be. Like, some people's dharma is to help they've never had their own challenge. It's actually to help other people with their challenge. Some people, it's the breakdown and the breakthrough, the mess and the message, the pain and the passion. But not, I think as we're shifting and raising consciousness, like our children and children's children won't have to go through the same kind of shit that we had to go through.
Right.
So they may not have to have had a breakdown to be able to help people. They may just be able to hold that light without having to experience it themselves. And I think that that's the way that we're moving towards. So it's, a lot of people think, well, I've had a normal life. I have no purpose here. And it's like, well, what problem can you still shift, even if it wasn't your personal problem?
Right. So as far as fulfilling your Dharma, I remember when I had you on the Positive Ed podcast a couple years ago, you told the story of how you really kicked off your career. And it was a great example of just putting yourself out there and not being afraid to fail. As I mentioned when I introduced you, Deepak Chopra, basically saying that this person is representing the paradigm shift and all the stuff that this show is about. And I'd love for you to share that story with the audience here of how you actually ended up connecting with them.
Yeah. So people were like, are you Deepak's daughter or something?
Yeah, right.
It's like, no, I was a stranger. So I literally went to this yoga and science conference that he was not even a speaker at. It was just a regular conference. And I remember, I'm someone who's more experiential. Like, if breathing's good for me, I'll breathe. I don't need 20 clinical studies on it. But this was one of those, another study that shows breathing is good for you.
Yeah.
I'm like,
put
okay.
on your surprise face.
Yeah. So I was a little fed up by the conference by then. I was like, you know what?
I'm noticing a pattern with you in conferences. You're
Yeah.
like, Eckhart Tolle, I was asleep.
Yeah, I definitely am
this
not.
breathing conference.
Yeah, I
Just
can't.
put me on stage, everyone.
Because it's the Vata in me. It's the Vata. I'm like, no, let's go do something. So I'm at this yoga and science conference, and I'm like, in my mind, so Deepak Chopra has always been someone I very much looked up to. When I was 12 years old, I started practicing yoga, and it was like, oh my God, this incredible person who brought this wisdom to the West. And then I had written my first book, Idiot's Guide to Ayurveda, but it was still not published. It was 2 days before it was going to print.
Oh, wow.
And I went to this conference, and it was about to be lunch, and I was like, I remember thinking in my head, the only thing that can make right now super lit is if Deepak Chopra walks on stage. And they're like, oh, and a word from our sponsor, Deepak Chopra. And he walks on stage. He's like, hello, everyone. And he just walks off.
That was it?
That was it.
Anticlimactic.
That was it. He was just saying hello.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And something within me was like, girl, this is probably the only time in your life you're going to see this guy in person.
Yeah.
So you need to go up to him. There are 1,000 people at this conference. I'm in the back row. So everyone's leaving, and I'm just going down. I'm going in. I don't even know, my guides were just moving me. So I walked down, up the stairs, onto stage, where he's just having there was conversations going on just between people. So I just stood next to him. And then he's like,
who's a stalker?
Hey. I'm surprised I even got that close to him,
Right.
And I'm like, hey, Dr. Chopra, I'm a really big fan. I wrote this book, and you're a huge inspiration for it. I would love to send you the PDF. He was like, sure, here's my email. I was like, oh my God, highlight of my life. I have Deepak Chopra's email. This is it. I made it. Yeah. And then I was walking back oh my gosh, what am I going to do with this email now? So I sent him an email. I sent him the PDF. And again, not even knowing if it was really his email, it had all these numbers in it. It was it was not Deepak@chopra.com. It was blah, 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 blah. And I was like, who knows? So I,
You've probably given out some numbers like that before.
Yeah,
that someone's
I'm
if I call this, is she on the other end?
Yeah. So I, so that happened, and they'll I was practicing manifestation. I didn't even know what Abraham Hicks was at that point. And my friend was like, have you heard of this Abraham Hicks thing of calling in what you want? I'm like, kind of. So I start to just really visualize how amazing would it be if he wrote the foreword of my book? Just imagine what that would be like. I met this guy once and had one sentence conversation with him, and I'm visualizing this foreword of my book. And I'm crossing the street, busy intersection, New York, eating while walking, super running behind on a meeting I had to go to. And I hear this homeless man behind me saying, can someone help me cross the street? I'm halfway across the street already. But something within me was like, Sahara, you say you're such a good person. Help this guy cross the street. So I'm like, I put my raw vegan sushi in my bag. And I'm like, sir, I'll help you cross the street. Where do you need to go? He's like, I need to go 2 blocks down into the subway. I'm like, okay, let's go.
Oh, wow.
So I take this man, I can still smell him today. It was the most foul smell. And his face was like, it was like discolored. It was, you know, you could tell this person had gone through a lot. So I take him by the arm and I start, you know, so where are you from? Like I could tell he had an accent. Turns out he was a refugee from the Iraq War who had come here, you know, a few years ago. My parents are from Iran. So we were connecting on that. And turns out he had a son. One was like a doctor and one was a lawyer. I was like, wow, this guy, I would have never imagined this. So we're talking, walking. I put him into the subway. The door's about to close. I'm like, sir, by the way, where are you going? He's like, oh, I'm a doctor of physics. And then it closes. I was like, huh, doctor of physics. I would have never imagined that. And I'm like walking away like, oh, New York's so cool. You meet all these cool people. It's
all
like
these smelly doctors.
It's like humans of New York. Happening. And then
Dirty doctor,
I open my phone and there's an email from Deepak Chopra the minute that I had let that man go. And it said, what's your number? I want to call you.
Wow.
I'm like, the voice of God wants to call me. You know? I'm like, what am I going to say? So call him. And he's basically like, where are you going to be on Tuesday morning? I have this conference in San Diego. I'm like, oh, I mean, I live in LA actually, and I'm leaving tomorrow, so I guess I could be there. He's like, okay, perfect. I'll see you there at 9 a.m. So I literally just like fly back to LA, drive to San Diego, like stay in some like random ass motel, doing yantras the whole time to try to like bring my vibration up. And then finally he gives 4-hour-long speeches, and he's giving this talk, and at the end he literally points at me. He's like, come on. Have a meeting with him. He asks me all these questions, and at the end, he's like, I love your book. I would love to write the foreword of it.
Wow. And you didn't even ask him to write the foreword.
Didn't even ask him. And then he's like all of these incredible things that we've done together. He's since written the foreword of both of my books. We're doing an Ayurveda certification course together. We did a 31-day challenge together. Like all of these crazy things that I in no way could have planned. So looking back on it, I truly believe that homeless man was not a human, but he was an angel that was essentially brought down in this costume to see that would you respect someone as much as you do this esteemed author who can bring you places? Would you respect a homeless man?
Yeah.
That is taking you off your path, that is getting in your way, that literally smells and is difficult to look at.
Right.
Would you give him that same respect as you would someone that you believe is up there?
And can do something for you.
That can do something for you.
Yeah.
And he was a doctor of physics like Deepak Chopra, you know?
In the angelic realm.
Yeah. And the fact that I said yes is exactly what caused all of this to happen. And it's just such a reminder that we're always, always, always being tested in ways that we can't even, comprehend. And when we choose to lead with our heart and we choose to not lead with what's going to be the best for me or what makes, we can get so stuck and even in the conscious space of like climbing the ladder and just to remind yourself, what am I doing this for?
Yep.
And to just keep bringing it back to being of service, being of service. The more that I'm of service, the better my life comes. And not to be of service to make your life better, but to do it because it's the only air that we can truly breathe that is going to feed us.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me think of the quote, treat everyone as if they're God and drag.
Yeah.
And which is truly what's going on, right? It's just like, it's truly the same, the source consciousness that animates your form is the source consciousness that animates that person's form. And if you're treating them as an extension of yourself no matter what, and what's great, this is a great equalizer. So you're no longer putting anyone on a pedestal. It's great to admire what someone's done, but also, the fascinating, I think it's the book, are you familiar with the book Power vs. Force by David Hawkins? A great book, and he talks about as we sort of evolve and advance, as a species and individuals, the different ways you might perceive a homeless person. So, when you get to one perspective, you might look at them as like, oh my gosh, this person is, they go get a job, you awful bum, like, what's wrong with you? The next level, you may be like, oh, look at that poor person, I feel sorry for them. Like, another level, as you continue to evolve your consciousness, is like, oh, what an interesting choice that soul has made. Like, I wonder what led to them being there, and what if they...
A lot of them are the oldest souls.
Right. I think I agree with that. It's like... you never truly know who or what you're bumping up against. And I've had a few experiences where I'm like, only a couple times in my life where I'm like, I don't know who or what that was, but it felt fishy. Like, it felt like there's something else going on here. And then magic ensued around them, or
Absolutely.
something timely because that, someone that you described and then being a doctor, like, that's not usually two things that go hand in hand.
No. And I think it's just like, showing that our teacher is in everyone. We think of a teacher as someone that published a book or did this or did that. Like, everyone you meet is your teacher in disguise.
Yeah.
It's just, do you choose to recognize them?
Yeah. It instantly always comes up for me too when people talk about like looking at how you and Deepak have now worked together and this whole thing has unfolded. My brain always goes to, I wonder what the karmic tie is there.
Absolutely.
Like, what have they experienced before? There's some sort of a soul contract there.
100%.
Like, who have you been to each other before? Instantly, my brain always goes there, and I ponder that. And wouldn't it be fascinating when we can get to the point where we can see like the full Akashic records? Like, let's see, and just like, oh, okay, and
And it's like not just one life; it's like many lifetimes. I'm sure maybe he's been my teacher. I've maybe have been his teacher. It's It's like, who knows? I mean, I actually in a past life regression saw him. I was a soldier in the Battle of Troy. I was like in that, and he was the general.
Wow.
And I remember seeing my husband and my brother, and we were all like in the army together, and we were like, come on, let's go. And he was like the general. And it was, and I think everyone in your life just shows up in these different ways. But yeah, certain people, it's like, there's some karma there that you're either there, you're always there to teach each other, but sometimes it could be more of the shadowy aspect of it. And sometimes it's just pure light.
Right. Yeah, I had someone come on the podcast once, and he goes, oh, before we begin, I'm going to do list clearing because we have some karmic ties. He's like, let me tap in. Oh, you have about 20% of the people you have on your show you have significant karma with. And I'm thinking, I don't know if this is true or not, but it's a really interesting concept, like that many people that you're bumping up against. Because if you think about it, anyone that you bump up against or have any significant interaction with, out of 7 billion people on the planet, what's the chances that you're even interacting with them? It's like, it's like hitting the lotto 50 times in a row something. So when you start thinking of it in those terms, like, all of us in this room right now, those of you listening, there's 7 billion, 8 billion other people out there who are not connecting vibrationally into the show, into this moment, into this broadcast. And it's like, to me, that's just like the most fascinating question to ponder. And I'm just ready to like open the book up.
We want to know the answers.
We want to know. I want to see it all.
But I think it comes back down to Dharma, right? It's like Dharma is essentially a soul contract that your soul chose before incarnation. It's like, okay, this is what the world needs at this time. So these are the gifts that I'm going to be born with, and these are the strengths and the weaknesses I'm going to have, and then these are the parents I'm going to choose and the city that I'm going to live up, and all of these things to help you ultimately fulfill this Dharma. But then we also have free choice.
Right.
Not everyone does it. Most people don't.
Right.
And it's like, sometimes I'm like, why'd you give us so much free choice?
Right.
We all just do the Dharma. But, that's the human experience / experiment. Right? It's like, Source is like, let's just see what they do. It's like they're divine, but they're also monkeys, and that's Hanuman, half monkey, half divine.
Right.
And that's really what we are. So it's like, are you going to choose to lead from that scarcity, lower brain, reptilian brain, which most of our government does, or are you going to choose to lead from that more subtle energy that may not make sense at all, may make you sound really kooky, but feels right to your soul?
Yeah, I like to put it, our life plays out at the corner of free will and destiny. So it's all destined because it's already happened, right? Time is an illusion. Einstein proved that. If you shoot me in outer space and bring me back a day later, I'm a day older and you've been gone 100 years or whatever, right? And if anyone's seen the movie Interstellar, when they're on that planet, there's a giant wave coming and like they get stuck for a few extra minutes and like 10 extra or 20 extra years goes on planet Earth. That's based off real science. So time, we know, is illusory. And, then you take this idea of free will and tie it. So it's like, okay, destiny has already happened. So the first time I sat down with someone who had some psychic ability and said, oh, I see you in a cold place like Chicago working in business. I was planning to move to Chicago and work in business. I'm like, wow, this is fascinating. I'd never had a reading done. She goes, oh, there's this whole other path in California and music. What was she seeing in that moment? Well, I believe she was seeing the potential me's sitting in front of her. So that's where the free will aspect comes in, right? It's like, based off of you in this moment, what version of Sahara are you going to choose from that seat forward? 100%. And there's all these paths. And ultimately, we want to choose the greatest and grandest version, the one that's the most fulfilling. And, I always say, well, whatever you can dream up, Deepak Chopra as the foreword, whatever, right, to your book, or beyond that, now it's evolved into beyond that, whatever you can dream up, Source has been there, done that, and gotten the t-shirt. It's already, it's happened, right? It can do anything. It is in infinite abundance, right? And so once you start playing with that idea conceptually, and, I'm always a super advocate of healthy skepticism, but once you start playing with that idea, it truly is a buckle up your seatbelt, and you can see, next thing you know, you're creating so much magic in your life and seeing these ripples of like, oh, wow, I'm sitting there imagining this, and he's approaching me asking if he can write, you didn't even have to ask in that case. So.
Yeah, and I think it's like, all of those, it could feel really overwhelming. Like, what if I make the wrong choice? Like, I drink the orange juice instead of the milk, and I end up in this other, we all saw that movie, and it's like, no one here drinks milk, so almond milk. But, right. Or orange juice. But I really believe more than that, there are actually just two paths, and it's truth and not truth. Because following your truth, it may lead you to Chicago, it may lead you to music, but I think no matter what, it would have led you here.
Right.
And then the not truth, it could have led you to Chicago, it could have led you anywhere too, but it wouldn't have led you here. So it's like, we have all of these timelines that we can fulfill, but our Dharma is one. So it's just like, what path do you want to take to get there?
There's many ways to get to.
Many ways to get to this, one wonderland.
Right.
But if you're just, at any moment, you can choose to not listen to your truth and go further and further away. So I see Dharma as like, you're on a highway and it's the end of the road. And when you're on cruise control, you're just like speeding, you're going towards Dharma, you experience the synchronicities, meeting the right people, the right time, the right place. Things are just happening for you. And that's called Kriya in Sanskrit. It means effortless flow. So that's actually the way that life was meant to be lived. That's supposed to be normal, Synchronicity is the new normal. But most of us, we are living in karma. So karma is what happens when you decide, oh, it would make a lot more money for me to do this, or my parents won't be happy if I do that. And then you start to, maneuver a little bit, and you're going further and further away. Exactly. And then again, life, the karma, actually one of the meanings of it is bounded action by the universe. So the universe tries to protect you. It starts to make your life feel hard. It starts to make, more negative things happen to you, but we choose to not listen. We actually think that that's normal, right? It's like, oh, Monday, how am I going to deal with today? Oh, I'm going to live for my Friday happy hour. Like, as a collective, for some reason, we've decided to agree upon that life is meant to be a struggle, and it's not. Life was meant to be lived in flow. So when you're living in flow, I'm in alignment, and all it can take is just one shift to go back into that. And when something's showing up for you, and it could be like, it still happens for me all the time. Like a month ago, I left my wallet on top of my car and I drove off. So I lost my wallet, which I was like, okay, fine, I'll cancel the credit cards. But it turned into all these other things like credit card fraud and this and that. And I was like, okay, why is this showing up for me? Clearly there's something I'm calling in. I can't preach all this stuff, but when it comes to me, it's like, why'd they steal my credit card? And it was me not being mindful about my money. It was me not, really having that strong, healthy relationship of knowing exactly where my dollars were going, et cetera. And Source was like, if you don't know where your money's going, someone else is going to direct your money.
Right.
So it can show up in something like that. And it was just such a good reminder to me of like, okay, I got to be on top of this. Thank you, message received.
Yeah. That's really the way I frame it is, why is this happening for me?
Yeah.
And when you start looking at the problems that way, that's really easy to do when something really good's going on. But when you can apply that to the losing your wallet, I mean, if anything's going to tweak you out. That's right up there, right? I mean, there's probably worse things, but that's definitely one of them. There's a few worse things, like 2. Yeah.
Death, losing your wallet.
Yeah, right. So, one of the things that I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are, that, the Deepak quote saying that you basically are, helping to usher in the new paradigm. What is, and then of course we've got Jonathan's incredible art of, future Eden. So what is your idea of, the new paradigm? What do you think is unfolding? Right
right here.
Right.
I mean, we're in it, right? I think the new paradigm is a paradigm of possibilities. It's a paradigm of not leading with everything that could go wrong, but leading with everything that can and will go right.
Yeah.
And it's letting go a lot of the ancestral, the familial stories. I believe that we all chose to be born in the exact microcosm of the problem that we were meant to solve. So you look at your parents, whatever that issue is you have with them, that's what you were meant to solve.
Right.
So if you look at that as you were born whole, and then you were born into this expression of what you're exactly not supposed to be, and then you actually morphed into it to come back into being whole again. If you could just look at that perspective, that's what the new paradigm is all about. So it's seeing everything as lessons. It's taking that next step forward, but it's also having fun.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us, we've made the spiritual path such a hard thing, and a lot of us, we aren't taking action because we think we need to be healed enough.
Yeah.
There's always going to be another past life to heal. There's always going to be another trauma.
But
whatever
wait, there's more trauma.
Yeah, and it's like you weren't born to be totally healed. You were born to be a human.
Yeah.
And sometimes, as a spiritual community, I think it's important to talk about this. Is like we go so deep into like, I need healing. I'm not whole. I can't do anything until I reach this certain level. And it's like you really don't. Oftentimes, the best thing that can allow yourself to heal is to just get out of your own victim story and to go out there and help someone else.
Yeah.
So I think that's what the new paradigm is all about, like making it more than just you, taking that ego out and making it to be of service and then enjoyment and having fun along the way.
Yeah, I love that. It's like enlightenment has it in the word, lighten up, right?
Yeah.
Lest you become like a child. You can't enter the kingdom of heaven, and heaven on earth is what we're all creating here. And it's that childlike wonder, having fun along the way, understanding like for there to be something to overcome, there's got to be someone who did some gnarly stuff. I mean,
for sure.
And so for souls that want to have the experience of forgiveness or, cleaning up the mess that was made, the mess has got to be made. And so I believe that's a really important perspective to adopt when we're just persecuting and judging like, the generations before us or our parents or the president or whoever it is. They're playing a role in a narrative, in a story that is, actually probably my favorite book is a book called The Little Soul in the Sun. Have you ever heard of this book? By Neil Donald Walsh, who wrote Conversations with God. And it's a children's book, and I talk about it all the time because it's so good. And it basically talks about, the soul lives in paradise, and then he's like, decides he wants to experience forgiveness, this idea of forgiveness. And then, but yet there's nothing to forgive. Then another little soul steps forward and says, I'll do something for you to forgive, but I'll have to lose myself in the process. And all I ask in that moment that I do this awful thing so that you can have the experience of forgiveness is that you remember me as I am here, because I'll have lost myself in that process. And it's like such a tearjerker story. I mean, that's a summary of it, but I highly recommend it for you guys can read it here afterwards. It's out there. But it's the best 10-minute read, and really I think sums up the story of who we are and what we're doing here.
For sure. I'm definitely going to read that.
Yes, you will love it.
Yeah.
You will love it. Well, this has been really, really epic up to this point, but we're not quite done. We're going to bring out the Mystic Manor guests.